we're alive. We made it.
We did.
Yeah,
We
more or
made
less.
it. Ugh.
We lived to see this moment in time adapted from the video game to the screen, and essentially what is the inciting incident for the game that it's based on, The Last of Us Part 2, and the rest of the show for a bit, I think, based on what Mason said in the making of. I just wanted to say to the audience, there will be spoilers for tonight's
So
episode
many.
in case that was not 100% clear a
Yeah.
moment ago. You still have time to leave without finding out the big moment that frankly has been kept from you for
Yeah.
at least 5 years now. If you don't know what was happening and going to happen tonight, preserve that because
Yeah, frankly, this is the spoiler. Like, of
yeah.
all the Last of Us
Yeah.
spoilers, this is the
Yes.
spoiler.
So, Chelsea, Laura, that said, welcome back, by the way.
Hi.
And what are you feeling? Tell me your thoughts. What are you feeling right now in the aftermath of episode 2, Through the Valley?
Man, what an appropriate title for an episode, first of all.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and I was saying to Chelsea just before we started going live, my first big takeaway is going into this episode, I had no idea how they were going to up the ante on this episode. Because, first of all, one final spoiler warning here. Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler.
We
Leave
haven't
if you
said
don't
it
want to
yet.
hear this.
This is the
but,
scene in Labyrinth where they're like, did she say it?
Yeah,
Say it!
but we're about to. Chelsea actually called this out when we were doing our pre-season 2 coverage of The Last of Us. Chelsea predicted that we were going to get Joel's death at the end of the second episode, and she was completely on point. So, points to you, Chelsea.
Oh, thanks.
Honestly,
I'm
Eric
so
doing
glad
the
you
golf
lied about
clap
this
over
thing.
here.
Before we started recording, the golf clap is timely, is very,
Oh,
very
yeah.
appropriate.
Oh, too soon.
I gotta
too
say,
soon.
I poured some whiskey to honor. At first, it was to honor Joel, but now it's to honor Chelsea on predicting when the death would
Oh,
occur.
thanks.
So, congratulations, all over it. How are you feeling, Chelsea?
I'm feeling really good. As well, I mean, really good is subjective, I suppose. I am here and I've stopped crying. And I mean, gosh, it was a fantastic episode. Just like how I'll start it off, there's obviously so much to discuss, but for the three of us to know exactly how it was going to end, for them to still raise the stakes and like keep me on the edge of my seat and on the verge of tears for like 90% of this episode until the dam burst, and then I was full on sobbing for the last part. It's just incredible that they were able to pull that off. Because we've known the spoiler for 5 years.
Well,
And
that's the thing I wanna
Yeah.
just prelude here of saying, in case we mention this in a way that rubs audience members, people who are listening to our show that haven't played the game, the wrong way, we have known about the secret for 5 years, and so ultimately your grief may be in some ways higher and fresher than ours. So if it's, we're not being careless, we're not meaning to take something out on a character or be like, oh well, that was a given, but we have had a few years to like not warm to the idea, but like brace ourselves for the worst, and
yeah,
so
we've been through all the steps.
if you find yourself hurting more than it is obvious that we are for Joel and for the characters of this universe, we're not assholes. Let me assure you, your feelings are valid. But I'm able to come off of this episode, and like Chelsea said, I feel good. Like, I honestly feel it's for all the reasons that were stated already. They upped the stakes somehow, but more importantly for me, they stuck the landing.
Yeah.
They continued the Mason Druckmann dream team here has once again delivered on the promise of adapting the story from the game on which it's based and heightening and building in little things that touch on a wider picture that's being told at the same time. There's more of that in this episode. It's just my mind is blown, and yeah, the contents of the episode were sad, but I felt like beside myself going, this is really good. Separate from the horrible events.
For sure. And just wanted to call out Jamie, who's listening to us live on YouTube. Hey, Jamie, thanks for joining us live after the episode. Jamie also adding some crying, laughing emojis that I think might have been for the golf clap reference. But also adding, it was rough. It was a rough episode. And I'm not going to deny anyone that, because like you said, Eric, as people who've been holding on to this for 5 years, it was really rough playing through it the first time too. And actually, I don't know if that's where we want to start, like pulling threads from this episode, is looking at the way that this whole storyline around Joel's death was adapted from the game, because largely it played out the same, but there were some key differences in the way that they portrayed it in the show that I thought were really interesting.
Yeah, first off, remind me, wasn't Tommy with Joel when they encountered Abby in the game? Okay.
Yes.
So I think that's a fantastic change.
Yeah.
Because Tommy's got his own thing to worry about. That's the other half of this episode of raising the stakes. And I loved Tommy's arc in this episode and his struggles and like what all of that represented. And then for Dina to be with Joel gives Abby double motivation to try and gives Ellie double motivation to try and catch up to them, to figure out what's going on. And it also brings Jesse in because he's got that attachment to Dina. And I mean, like, it makes sense the way they made that change. And I am really pleased with it as a change, because again, it makes sense. And I think there's a certain, in the game, there's a certain believability that you have to kind of like set aside when Tommy's there and isn't able to help like Joel succumb or like overcome this gang of young adults. And so to make it Dina instead and make it Joel against these 5-6 other people, I think that makes it a little bit more believable. And the threat against Dina's life, making him surrender in that moment, again, just kind of makes more sense. So it's a really smart change. And then the stuff they gave Tommy to do was much more interesting anyways.
I like that a lot, and they've set Dina up as almost a surrogate daughter, like almost like the way Ellie is like a second daughter to Joel, and so having her be present while he was still cognizant works on that level as well. He was able to say goodbye to Dina. I think he knew that was what was up, and I think Dina pretty much knew that something bad was going to happen when she was put to sleep, and he got to say goodbye to her when he was fully conscious. He also gets to say goodbye to Ellie, of course, in a manner that is similar to the game. But and here's the thing, I don't think it gets necessarily easier. What playing through this moment in the game, I really don't think it gets easier. But what felt during watching the show like it was a feast for me is how it felt, because they were able to show just slightly more of the perspective from the rest of the Salt Lake crew.
Yeah.
There are some really interesting things that are happening in this episode between the Salt Lake crew and Abby and their motivations, and you kind of get the sense even in the game they don't really want to be there. You learn a lot more about them toward the back half of the game. But the fact that it's present here and the choices that are made in this episode really deepen and characterize that whole element of it, which will clearly play a huge important role in this season. Even we got kind of a nod to Isaac, who's like way the hell, like, there's clearly a direction that the show is going in, and the added texture that they've put on top of this horrifying moment just for like the audience's eyes feels like a treat. And I was just really, again, I have to avert my eyes, but just like when Joel was killing all the fireflies on the show, the camera was looking away. I was touched and relieved at the moments during this episode when the camera was looking away as well. I felt kind of saved. The game, I think, shows more of the blows being landed.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not pretty.
And as a matter of fact, the final blow is very different in the game from what I recall to what we see in this episode. I think for the episode and to make it palatable for television, they had to not have Joel eat the club of a or the head of a golf club, which is what happens in the game, and it is a brutal. I
Gosh,
will
yeah.
say, not to say that this isn't, but I think that there was a strategic choice made, and I thought it was so interesting. And I would need to go back and revisit the gameplay. There is this moment right after Abby stabs Joel in the neck with the broken golf club where she makes eye contact with Ellie, and there's almost this malevolent, like, yeah, justice has been done. I did that type vibe. At least that's what I perceived coming off of her. And I really wonder if all of these changes they've made, having Dina be there instead of Tommy so that Dina can be the person who gives Ellie all the intel that she needs on the
We see
WLF
that in the
and
preview.
yeah, and all these people, because Tommy probably like wouldn't want to encourage Ellie to go on a vengeance trip, but Dina totally would.
Well, and
So,
Tommy's got
yeah.
stakes in it. That's
Yeah.
but at the same time, this so smartly weaves Dina and Ellie into a reliance cycle on each other
Yep.
in a way that they just never would have been before, and I think it's safe to say weren't in the game. In the game, it's really their would-be relationship that I think propels them, and the fact that they do ultimately care about each other. But in this setup, Dina had more to lose by Joel's death herself because they had a relationship, and the additional her feelings for Ellie are augmented by the fact that she really is capable. She was perceiving everything that was happening to her, even when she was recovering from a frostbitten hand. So it really only adds things to Dina's character that I think are wonderful for the future.
Yeah, agreed.
Because we're talking about Abby giving a look to Ellie, and I don't recall the exact moment. What I recall of Abby after she lands the killing, the stab, still with the golf club.
And by the way, I
Yeah.
think that shows an increased level of violence, like that change specifically. Like instead of her smashing him over the head with the golf club, she's already beaten him so hard with it that it snapped in half, and she still
Yeah.
finishes the job with the golf club.
You're exactly
but it's
right.
a completely different context that shows the brutality. And there's a moment when she's just kneeling over Joel and
That's what I was
beating
gonna
his
mention.
face to a pulp that mimics a moment from the previous episode where they're trying to get Abby's attention in that moment, and she's just completely closed off to the world. Ellie had the same moment in the previous episode
Yep.
when she was training and fighting, and Jesse had to basically pull her off of the other guy because she was so absorbed in the violence. And so we're already seeing how, of the same coin, cut from the same cloth, Abby and Ellie both are in a lot of ways.
Totally. Yeah, they are two sides of the same coin. That is exactly right.
For me, let's talk about Abby in this episode, because her character, she is given a few more things for us to get to know kind of who she is before she does the horrible thing. In the game, you're playing as her, but that's limiting to what you get. In this episode, I want to say, Caitlin Dever, it's almost a more vulnerable Abby. She's out on patrol, and she's like, oh, it's cold, and she's like, a whole hour of this. And these comments are making me think wow, this is not the militant, she's dedicated. She wants to be here, but she's human the way the rest of us are. In the game, you can kind of skirt by that because you're the survivor character. But watching how she even was going to go in before her shift was up, which would have certainly led to something bad for the rest of her crew, who are all out there risking their lives. I'm like, she's making choices that are ultimately more human, but also that are not super great for the rest of her. She's abandoning her watch essentially, or was about to, right when things happen. And I think ultimately the thing that sticks with me for this episode in Caitlin Dever's portrayal of Abby is after she does the deed and she's kneeling over Joel after he's, the killing blow, she seems pretty traumatized. I don't think what I don't see from her in that moment, or when they're walking away, when the whole crew is walking away in the snow, what I don't see on her face is satisfaction. That's not what I see. I think you've committed a horrible act, and I think that alone will continue to haunt you, just as up until a minute ago, your thirst for revenge was haunting you. Now that you've got it, we didn't see her grin. I think she looks traumatized.
Well, you know, the pre-opening credits scene for this episode is we get Abby dreaming, and she's walking down a hospital, and she comes across herself. But what was really interesting to me is that she said, "I don't know who you are. I don't recognize you." And so this was her younger self discovering what happened to, spoiler, I guess, her father. I mean, we're past spoilers, but you know, that we learned it officially in this episode, that the surgeon who was going to operate on Ellie in the previous season
and come up with a cure for all humanity,
end her life. Yes. That dichotomy of ending her life versus potentially saving humanity. But as she's approaching that room, her current self says, "He's dead. His brains are on the floor. You don't want to go in there." And so we're seeing this distance between the Abby who she was and the Abby she is now, and her not recognizing who she has become. And I think that is fully realized by the end of this episode, like you were talking about, Eric. She has lost a vital part of her humanity by going through with this incredibly violent act.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, ultimately, I think it goes to show that part of the message is it's not going to make you feel any better. And it's certainly not going to put your life on a different, better trajectory. It's just constantly repeating the cycle of violence. And yeah, in this, we get to see Ellie basically become Abby. Now she's in Abby's shoes, and she's like, my father figure was killed by someone, so now I'm gonna F you up. You know?
Yeah, and I appreciated how, I mean, it's not any easier in the game. Like, Ellie is made helpless very easily. She's quickly outnumbered. I was wondering too, when the killer Joel, that this show is famous for showing us Pedro really capable of murder. Like, I look at him playing Joel and I'm like, yeah, he could kill innocent people easily. I was wondering when he would defend himself, when killer Joel would show up. And if I can pre-anticipate some of the feedback, you know, maybe for this episode, maybe some people would also like, oh, I would have liked him to at least be able to take out one or two of them. But like, no, you got to understand this is Joel has known, I think, for a while that his number would come due, or that karma would come back around, or that ultimately he could not be free from this mark, from this stain on his soul. And I think that although he doesn't know quite what's in store for him, I think there's a certain understanding that he comes to pretty quick with Abby once she's put the gun on Dina, that he knows that this is the time. This is the day that he dies.
Yeah. I think this was also, like, at a high level, fairly game accurate, too, because the fact of the matter is he's just severely outnumbered and outgunned. And he literally gets his knee blown apart. Once that happens, there's really not much defending yourself, you know?
That's a fair point.
You know, something that's interesting about the writing, and this is from the game too, but it's interesting how Abby's quest for vengeance is almost like, I can see how she would see it as justified by the fact that Joel is delivered to her on a silver platter, right? Like the way this episode opens after the opening credits, and they're hanging out in the lodge and they're looking down and like, oh crap, Jackson is a lot bigger than we expected. There's no way we're going to be able to pull this off. Abby is like, we're still going to find a way. Everybody else is saying behind her back, we're going to try and convince her we need to go back because this is a suicide mission. And so she goes out on her scouting quest, and who does she happen upon? But Joel.
hell.
And it's just insane that, looking at impossible odds, Joel just stumbles across her. Yes, saves her life, which is a fantastic twist. And I love that they keep that moment intact where there's like a sliver of hope that she's going to let Joel off the hook because he has saved her life. And then she announces to everybody, and this is Joel. And the atmosphere completely changes, and like it's downhill from there. But just leading up to that, the fact that Abby came, like, she's been living her life these past 5 years thinking, this is my life's purpose. I have to avenge my father and kill this man who killed all of these fireflies. What was the number they gave us? 18 soldiers
18,
plus her father. So killed all these people. And I am going to pursue him for 5 years. We're going to hunt him down. We're going to figure out where he's living. We're going to go to where he's living, and we're going to drag him out. We're going to kill him slowly because that's what he deserves. And for that to be her purpose, and then, oh, Joel, he's right here. He just like
He's
shows
here.
up. Like, I
Well,
can
and her
imagine
crew
thinking,
is
okay,
relieved too,
Right.
because it's like, let's get this over with. They all just want it over with. They want it over with.
Right.
And you look at what kind of people are capable of this kind of monstrosity, and it's like, honestly, they did it because the opportunity struck. And it would have looked very different if Abby hadn't just come across Joel at the right exact moment. But the way in which everything came together in service of that was just stunning. And yeah, sure, it's in the game, but equally, devastating to watch in the show. So that we have plenty more to talk about, even regarding Abby and the Salt Lake crew. There's so much more to get into. But before we do, I think it's time we heard from our sponsors.
Sounds great. We don't have to do, and because this isn't going up on the feed, right?
Well, didn't you say that pre-first ad would make up the first clip that goes on YouTube?
Yeah, that's fine too. Yeah,
because that first 20 minutes being like a segment on the murder, like that makes perfect sense.
The murder. Yeah, no, I think that
What should I
sounds
have
great.
said there?
No, that's totally fine. It just didn't have. It doesn't have to be an ad break, but it can also just be. Yeah, it can just be.
Oh, if it doesn't have to be an ad break, well, we could put our ad there.
Yeah, if we were gonna do one, but
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
we have so much more that happened in this episode to talk about. I know we're not done talking about Abby and Joel, but let's think on this. And where do we go? Where do we go from here? Where does the show go from here? I'm excited to think about it.
Definitely. Perfect.
All right. So how do you guys want to do? I mean, we can just. I'll talk about it. There's so much else that happened in this episode, and it's so satisfying to see. Let's actually drift over to Tommy, because he's sort of our through line in the game. We know that he was present with Joel. And Chelsea, I love your observation that had Tommy been there, whether it's, game Tommy or show Tommy, maybe the odds would have felt a lot different.
There would have been more of a fight against the situation, I think, rather than Joel just kind of accepting his fate.
Yeah.
Especially because the person that he most is responsible for, he kept Joel in this show kept looking back at Jackson. His heart was with everyone that he loves in Jackson. He wasn't fearful about himself. He was fearful about the raging fire that he saw out the window. And that to me is a mark of how well Pedro's acted, but also where Joel, everything that he cared about, everything that he saved was far away from here. And I think that would have been the way that he preferred to die, not with anyone he knows or cares about being close and in harm's way. But as you said earlier, Chelsea, in our part one, in our previous video, and earlier in this episode, if you're on the audio, the decision to leave Tommy and Jackson felt right. I agree. And the show has given him a child. The show has given him so much more pillar of the community vibes. He has to run the essentially siege resistance plan. He has to make sure everyone's at their stations. Like, he can't be going out even on a patrol, even on his like with his brother in this moment, because the Tommy of the show like really wouldn't abandon his post that way.
Yeah. Well, and this is something I loved about this episode. I feel like it's another way that this creative team is adding to the world of The Last of Us, because we got to hear about cases of Jackson being attacked in the game, but we never actually had this whole sequence of a horde of infected attacking Jackson play out. So getting to see how that happened here, getting to see sort of like the artillery and the battlements and all of the strategies that Tommy put into place for Jackson was really a treat, because as a player of the game, I felt like I was getting something new out of the story. It was really, really like, I mean, my heart was running like 100 miles an hour throughout that entire sequence as we pivoted back and forth between what was going on in Jackson and what was going on up in the mountains with Joel and, you know, and company. So it really was just a nail biter of an episode, even though I pretty much knew where we were going to end up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the emotional build of this episode is just so intense across both things that are simultaneously happening. It felt like a thriller or horror episode. Mm-hmm. Like this was their this was their exploration of that genre, because like even in season 1, we got very little infected, certainly not to this extent. Mm-mm. And I mentioned this earlier, I was on the verge of tears for like the entire time, because we knew what was going to happen with Joel. We didn't know for sure. I mean, we could hope what was going to happen to Jackson, but this is something we've already said that's not in the game. We were experiencing it for the first time. And so for us to immediately have the payoff from the previous episode of this like supercharged infected that are evolving and learning to insulate themselves from the cold by using their own dead bodies, and then using that to like build an attack and plan an attack. And we already get the payoff of the mycelium that was in the pipes in Jackson in the previous episode too. So like immediately we're jumping into the stakes of like how the infected have changed. And I'm just blown away. Like the shot of thousands, hundreds of infected swarming, like you said, Laura, that's not something we would do in the game, because as a single player, you cannot fight an entire swarm of hundreds, thousands of infected. Like it's not a thing you can do. And so for them to present that to us is just like insane. And the terror of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For those people who are wondering about the game, there is a horde of infected during these scenes. Abby escapes. The scene with Abby and the chain link fence, absolutely 100% perfectly adapted exactly in the game. There is a horde of infected, but there is not a coordinated attack on Jackson. There are hordes of infected that are just one-offs, that are just groups of people that all got infected roughly around the same time, and they just happen to be coming at the same time. It's not due in the way that the show illustrates to a particular response or to a particular storm, but where this show is going with strategic infected, I literally am wondering, did they wait for a storm to attack when visibility would be poor? Like, we just don't know. You know what creeped me out? The bloater, which, welcome back.
Yeah.
Welcome back, buddy.
Welcome back, big boy.
Welcome back, big boy.
We missed you.
Oh, that needs to be a title of something.
We're just going to call him Big Boy for the rest of the season. Big Boy's back.
Big Boy than the one that killed Perry, but you know, all the same. When he was when he looked up at Maria from the ground and she was shooting at him, and he looked up and made a plan to go for her. Hello, like that. I mean, that level of consciousness in it. And to be fair, I think bloaters do react that way in the game, but to see this on the show, the way that like an infected can carry a grudge is sort of next level precedent that has not been shown on the show before, and in the game it's very rare.
Yeah, for sure. It really does. It had me questioning, like, how exactly do the infected, this frozen horde, like even come to consciousness? Because there are a couple of things that happen. One, Abby slides into the valley of the frozen infected, and
Hmm.
it seems like her just shuffling on top of them wakes them up. But at the same time, in Jackson, one of the workers is cracking open another one of those clay pipes and disturbing some more cordyceps, and he visibly sees them and they start making contact with the air. So is it some kind of just convenient timing that Abby happened to wake everybody up just as the cordyceps were getting exposed to the air in Jackson, and they were like, hey, dinner's over there, we can go chow down at the Jackson buffet, you know?
Right. Well, it seemed
Jackson
like there were
buffet.
two simultaneous giant hordes. There was the one that was chasing Abby and
Yep.
Joel and Dina, and then there was another one that, when they dug into the clay pipes, separately woke up. And then, because they're all connected to this mycelial network, they were all drawn at that moment to Jackson. And so
It's
we see
like,
these two
yeah,
swarms separating and then converging together as they get closer to the town. And just the sheer numbers of that,
it's
there's
massive.
no possibility of retreat with infected. Like, these are smarter infected, but they're not going to stop an attack because they're losing, right? They're going to attack until they're
No,
gone. Victory
to
for
the
the
yeah.
people of Jackson can only be total annihilation of this attacking force, and failure is anything less than that. So the threat to the people of Jackson is so high here, and you see it in Tommy's eyes as he's standing on that wall looking out. And I mean, it's a real consideration that this is the end of their community that they've spent so hard putting together, protecting their people, building families, living lives. Everybody has so much to lose here. Tommy has the chance of losing Joel, losing Maria or his child, or vice versa, them losing him, the town itself. And all the little looks during this fight as they breach the wall, and the bloater comes in and makes contact with Maria, and Tommy makes a decision to try and sacrifice himself to draw it away. There's all these little moments where they make this eye contact with each other, where they know it's like the potential actual goodbye of their relationship, and they know the stakes, they know the cost, but they're willing to make those sacrifices for what they believe is the higher purpose.
And here's the thing:
Yeah.
the Jackson is quaint. The church services, the Christmas carols, the deli are very quaint. They ain't worth a damn if you do not have a plan for a siege. And seeing that plan, those drills that they're going on, the patrols, seeing those brought to their natural conclusion, which is in a successful thwarting of a massive, massive mob. Good on Tommy and everyone involved. We actually see a successful, like a victory for humankind, and it was not a sure thing. It
Mm-mm.
was only down to the level of planning, even just the kids go in the basement, barricade the door. We know some infected got in a shop. They were trying to get in that door. Like the adults
Yeah.
going up. It was just so unpredictable when the moment comes. It's like, this is a masterclass in how do you prepare for what you can't possibly prepare for. They did it. And in this case, they were victorious. But here's the other thing: the victory was not a sure thing for their part either. The fact that they won, great, but they could very easily have been a infected wasteland by now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, how do they rebuild from
Yeah.
here
Right.
too, right? And like, I'm sure next episode we'll get to see the full fallout,
Scope of that.
because it's not like Jackson escaped completely unscathed. We know some people were lost. We know some people, I mean, we saw towards the end of the episode at least one person asking to be taken out because they had been bitten, so they
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to turn. So we'll get to see some of that next week. But, you know, what does it take for Jackson to rebuild, especially knowing how vulnerable they are right now?
Mm.
Right.
And there are things worse than bloaters. If the universe
Uh-huh.
of the games translates to the network, and all it took was
Mm-hmm.
one bloater to breach those wooden walls.
Mm-hmm. The fact that
And
Tommy saw the bloater and immediately knew they were going to breach.
he's met one of those guys before, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, oh, these
Uh,
ones. They're
but
the
you know
muscle.
what? You know what made me so happy about the bloater? We got to get the flamethrower out.
We
I
got
was
the
like,
flamethrower.
that was for the game players. They were like, we got to get the
Yes,
flamethrower
because
out.
who among us, literally, how many times have you been there? You have, what, 250 flame or gas or 300 flame or 175 because you used some flame on some Seraphites that you shouldn't have, and you're like, do I have enough space in the tank to fully handle this bloater? I'm out of grenades, I'm out of nail bombs, I'm out of everything. All I have is my flamethrower and a pistol. The pistol's shit. Do I have enough tank for this bloater? And Tommy, in this episode, was 100% exactly right there where we all have been.
Yeah. Man,
Turns out he had just
is this going to be
enough.
enough?
yeah,
Just enough in the tank.
definitely
Oh.
felt that. The initial feeling of satisfaction of like, that's right, take this motherfucker. And then it's like they're not going down and you're like, I am running out of gas.
I guess I try
And he's back
again.
into a literal corner.
Yeah. So satisfying. So good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love what they did with Tommy this episode. I thought it was a really nice departure.
Well, he still
Yeah,
gets
and
the
then-
same character motivation for his arc that we know about from the game. Like, he has the exact same motivations. He didn't need to be there in the room.
Mm-hmm.
We get so much
Yeah.
more out of him
Yeah.
not being in the room.
Totally.
Right, and seeing the end of the aftermath of the battle as Tommy walks back out into the main street, and he and Maria make contact with each other. They both made it through, and for him to almost like collapse against her with both like the physical and emotional toll that this battle took on him. As we've said, there's a lot to rebuild in Jackson, and it's not just the buildings, it's the sense of safety that they built. And they're going to have to start the next episode with the realization that Joel is also gone and deal with what comes after that.
We made some predictions leading into this season, and one of the things, spoiler, whatever, that we were talking about, I think it's safe, so I'm just going to say it, is that the director of next week's episode is the same director who directed Long, Long Time, the Nick Offerman, Murray Bartlett showcase. And based on select clips from the next week on that we saw, it does seem like we will get some of Ellie's very next moments. Her waking up, her being, kind of in recovery, and in some of the mourning of Joel. Though we may not yet know exactly the shape of next week's episode, maybe they still will do something a little bit like Long, Long Time, which had current events, a little bit of Joel and Ellie at the gas station and showing up at Bill's house, but then most of the episode was Bill and Frank flashback. Maybe there still will be some element of looking back, but here's the thought that occurred to me listening and watching this episode. Oh, what if it's just an emotional episode about the love of Joel and how everyone in
Yeah.
Jackson lost him? Like, I would get that director back for that. Like, even if there's no flashbacks, like, what will episode 3 hold is now an open question.
Yeah. I'm wondering, just reflecting on a line that got dropped in episode 2 tonight, and maybe y'all can remind me from the game because it's been a minute since I played Last of Us Part 2. But where Ellie has this confrontation with Jesse about what's going on with her and Joel, and she's like, me and Joel are fine, get out of our business. Like, me and Joel are just me and Joel, and actually I want to go on patrol with him. Did that happen in the game, or is that new? Because if that's been something that's been added, it could point, Eric, towards exactly what you're saying here, that next episode fills in some of the gaps about what's been going on between Joel and Ellie that we haven't gotten to see as much these last
maybe.
couple episodes.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how that goes down in the game either. The last shot we saw of episode 1 was Joel on the porch with his guitar after the dance, having stepped in with Seth using a slur against Dina and Ellie, and then Ellie just like makes eye contact and then storms off. But we're almost led to believe in this episode that wasn't the end of their story that night, that there might have been some kind of reconciliation, because the Ellie that we saw in episode 1 and the way she was interacting with Joel wouldn't have wanted to go on a patrol with Joel
Right.
unless there had been some kind of reconciliation. So whether we get it in the next episode or later in the season, I don't think it's far-fetched to think that we might see what that moment looks like eventually.
Here's something that I wanted out of the making of, because we heard from Pedro. We saw Pedro talk about this role and this episode and that. We heard from, in fact, if you're not already on the making ofs, they're just at the end of the existing episode that you're already watching on HBO. Watch them, please.
They're really good.
Not to mention the official podcast, which also will have insights that will no doubt delight us. Last week's was great. But I think it's safe to say, although the making of does not say, although this is Joel, like Joel ain't coming back to life from that, this may not be Pedro's last day of shooting on this episode for the TV show. I think it's time that we can finally reveal, Laura Chelsea, that Joel, in fact, has an identical twin, Joe Miller, who will be coming to Jackson. He's been searching. He went on those genealogy websites. Wait, they didn't exist yet in 2003. He somehow found out that he's an identical twin, abandoned at birth, and he's going to show up tomorrow's or next week's episode. And, you know, he and Tommy are going to get a reconciliation that's really good, but Pedro's very much still in the show. And for that, I am joyful, but I'm also sad in a way because, you know, Pedro was such a huge part of what made the show successful, I think, and it's such a major character to go. I don't think we're going to easily recover, and I don't think audiences anywhere could or should be like, okay, real gung-ho about, let's get the Abby and Ellie story. No, there's still a lot of mourning we have to do for Joel, and especially Pedro Pascal's Joel. I just think which was just so much more textured in the way that the show was so much more textured. So I can't wait to see how the remaining pieces of the Joel and Ellie narrative will play out across this season, maybe even the next. And I just want as much Pedro as possible. I was gunning for this death thing to happen in the finale of this season. I would have liked it if they had held up, but I think it's very ambitious of them to, and bolder to stick to pretty much the timeline of where in the season, where in the game this happens.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, I think all of that gives credence to the idea that the next episode might delve into more flashbacks with Ellie and Joel. We still, in the universe of the show, haven't gotten a reason for their separation, why Ellie's been so upset with him. And so they've got to explore that at some point too. And this show isn't the type of show for that to just be a piece of dialogue from Ellie to Dina. It's something that I think that we're more likely to see actually happen between Ellie and Joel.
Yeah, for sure. Something I wanted to ask y'all about and see if I'm the only one feeling this way, and if I am, that's totally fine. But I know we spoke last week about Abby and Caitlin Dever and her portrayal of Abby. And I think Caitlin Dever's portrayal of Abby is just spot on. I think she completely knocks it out of the park. But something that I still feel like I'm missing is a differentiation between the Abby that was and the Abby that is after her father's death. We see so little of her so far, pre her father's death, that it's really hard to denote the distinction between her character at those 2 points in time. And that is a really key part of her character in the game. They of course portray this through her physicality, right? Like she gets completely buff so that she can fuck Joel's day up. I mean, that's the whole point of it. And when you see Abby in the flashbacks, she's not buff, right? Because that hasn't happened yet. That motivation hasn't reached her. And of course, in the present day, she gets, I mean, extremely militaristic, extremely buff. And I don't, yeah. I think we don't need that in the show. Again, like we don't need the transformation to be shown through physicality. but I do want to see some kind of transformation.
Yeah, in the absence of that, what are they
Yeah.
going to do to show it? And I think that it's in these subtle moments, like her looking really unfulfilled and traumatized after she kills Joel. Like, I think that's going to show us, because there's so much more to come with Abby character wise. But it's like Chelsea was saying, like at the very beginning in the dream sequence, Abby's dream sequence, you know, she says to her older self, "I don't recognize you," but like that's not necessarily earned up till this point.
Right, right.
It's something in a look, you know, it's something in, and that's enough. If you know, what would you do if you're 5 years down the line, future self comes, you know, and it's like, hey, by the way, don't go in there, and you're like, fuck you, I'm gonna go in there.
Right.
You know, like, so, but I had a lot of confidence that it would be earned. But I will say, to your question, Laura, hearing present day Abby talk about the militia that she's joined and like the rules and stuff didn't, for me, make her seem that much more evolved. Like, it wasn't ultimately a more uh controlled Abby, because she's still going to do the things she needs to do and is here to do, but then also she's disregarding some of these rules that her militia has about killing people who can't defend themselves. And so the point of her bringing up this militia was a really nice look ahead to Isaac and some of the stuff that the WLF will have, which is on their backpack, but doesn't ultimately, again, sell it for me yet on Abby's entire personality changing over the last 5 years. I think the only thing that could do that is more backstory of the Seattle crew between the first shot of this season and the moment where they're showing up to kill Joel. I think we need a little bit. There's no reason why we wouldn't get it, but that for me is going to show that she like relentlessly drove them to come to Jackson. Like, I need to get more time there, because what we get in the episode is her friends almost trivialize it. They all know why she's here, and they all kind of grudgingly agreed to come with her. But none of them are true believers of the way that she is, and that absolutely, before now, would have absolutely caused tension. And so I want to see those kind of tensions, which will push Abby into the character that we know that she is now, like the darker side of it. It's almost like this episode didn't show the darkest sides of Abby. They showed what she can do, which is nuts, and what she does is insane and hard. But there is, I think, an even higher intensity that maybe is yet to be fully realized on the show.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think so. In our preview episodes, I had speculated that our next episode following Joel's death would be kind of a flashback episode giving all of the backstory of Abby, this character that we knew existed, and we knew that was going to do this thing. And I posited, I'll just own up to it, I posited that
You better.
having a full flashback episode would help the viewer to understand her a little bit more. Now, it doesn't seem like that's what we're going to get in the next episode, but I still think it's something that we're going to get eventually. And what we got in this episode, I think, was at least a little taste of that. I think what they gave us was enough to at least understand in this moment why she is killing this character that we love so much.
It works better in the show
Definitely.
than it did in the game up until this
Yeah.
point.
It doesn't make us like her, but it
No.
makes us understand. And I
Yes.
think there's still going to be something that's going to help us to like her more at some point, because I mean that's just kind of part of who she is in our relationship to her in the game. And so I do think that we'll definitely get some more of like her time spent with her father, who we know is a surgeon. We'll get some more time spent with her friends in the before times, or at least in the transitory times between 5 years ago and present day. And we'll see some of that emotional change. Though the one thing you said, Eric, that I want to push back against very gently is that I think her friends are fully bought into the very specific mission of killing Joel. It's anything outside of that very, very specific mission of this man who they think deserves to die because of all the people that they love he killed, and this big idea of the Fireflies that he killed. And so they're behind that, and they're with her. Okay, Abby, we've been with you these 5 years. We've helped you search him down. We're here with you, and we are going to help you kill him, because that is what the thing they believe in. But it's any time she delves even just slightly outside of that plan, like the potential of kidnapping people. And then, okay, what are we going to do next? Are we just going, we can't let them go because then that endangers us, or we can't kill other people because that's not what we do. Or when Dina shows up on the scene, like, Abby can't properly threaten the Dina and hold Joel hostage because her friends speak up and say, wait, we said we weren't going to do it. And she just says, shut up. So that's when her friends start to push back. But in the mission of killing Joel, they are all in, I think.
Yeah,
I agree. I also think they want her to get on with it. I think that's the other thing is like Abby is kind of using the code, if you will, as an excuse to draw out Joel's suffering. And even Owen, I think it's Owen, comes to her at the very end and is like, hey, just end this. Just finish it.
gone on
Stop
enough.
drawing
You're
it
at
out.
risk.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this isn't what we signed up for. And I think we get a sense from her crew that they kind of feel like she's taking it a little too far. And it almost seems like Abby, in a very similar way that like characters like Joel and Ellie have people surrounding them saying, hey, I understand why you're pissed off, but you're actually making things worse. And I feel like her group of friends is feeling a similar way. I think they, like you said, Chelsea, I think they definitely were on board with getting rid of Joel, but I think that was it.
Well,
And
but there's no way to get rid of Joel without also getting your hands dirty in all these hundreds of other ways that spring up even during this episode. They managed to get away with it, sure, but that you know how many millions of little variables had to come for them to get Joel and only Joel on a silver platter like this? Insane. And so I think that their reticence to go any further than just killing Joel shows that they weren't prepared for this mission, because to me, there's no universe in which you're just going to get him the exact way that you did on a silver platter. But
yeah.
that said, I think something that a lot of people won't take away from this episode is that Abby showed mercy by not killing Dina, and by not, but she did, right? Am I crazy on this?
Yeah,
Like
no, I
she
mean,
gave Joel her word that she wouldn't kill Dina, and she didn't kill Ellie. So, and I think there's even a moment in the game where Ellie like asked to be killed. Am I making that up? But like,
Oh, I don't remember.
Maybe. I don't
We'll
know.
have
she's like,
to...
I'll kill you. You better kill me, you son of a bitch, because I'll kill you, or something like that.
Yeah.
And
I don't
she
know
walks
about
away.
mercy, though. Like, mercy is when you hold back from giving somebody the thing they deserve, or that you think they deserve, right? And it's not necessarily that they think Dina did anything wrong, or even Ellie. Like, they may not even. I don't know.
But
for
it
sure,
puts
but they
them
may
in a
not even
precarious
know-
position to leave survivors. Like, that to me is either the mercy or another word for it. It is a conscious choice to allow witnesses, and that will be their undoing. So I think any position that leaves them vulnerable to a follow-up attack or a retaliatory attack is a deliberate choice on their part, and in Abby's case, a show of mercy. At least that's how I'm viewing it now, but
Yeah.
I've resolved to be able to be convinced otherwise.
Well, I think no matter what, they're underestimating the victims that they're leaving behind. And what's so
I think
funny
that's the big
about
thing.
that is that in a very similar way, Joel was thoughtless about, the repercussions he was leaving behind in Salt Lake,
It didn't matter.
right? He wasn't thinking about the fact that doctor had a daughter,
Nope. He was
Right?
only thinking about his daughter.
right?
Yeah, everybody's so
exactly.
singular in the things that they're trying to achieve. Whether it's Joel, I'm saving Ellie, I'm saving who I can save. Or whether it's Abby, I'm killing Joel, and that's it. And what she has awakened is Ellie saying, now I am going to kill Abby. She's traded vengeance for vengeance, is what we're promised the rest of the season based on what Ellie says as she's laying there on the ground, having just seen Joel be killed. But then too, in the up next episode, we know that Ellie's got her sights set on taking her revenge.
And the interesting thing about that too, and the like one-mindedness of revenge, is if she hadn't showed up now, or Abby has no concern or no concept of the fact that Joel was actually a pillar of his community right now, that Jackson, this amazing refuge, might be one of a kind in the world for these people, was safer with Joel alive. And he was actively contributing to it. And in a small way, she's dooming humanity a little bit more, at least the residents of Jackson, by taking this pillar of the community away from them. That said, how does that stack up against what Joel did, which was to remove the only possibility of a cure that was known to man, or at least a small circle of people, from the people? I said this all goes back to what Joel did in the season 1 finale. In Salt Lake, which Abby makes him relive. I liked that scene where she's like, take it, you have one choice, tell the truth. But the very infected, a lot of the infected, this is going to get technical for the video game. A lot of the infected shown in this episode were runners. That's the first stage of infected, meaning they were recently infected. These people wouldn't have had to become this way. The Horde wouldn't exist that we see in this episode if a cure had been found and if large communities were vaccinated, because Abby's dad knew what was up. Ellie would be gone, but the world wouldn't be as terrifying as it is in this episode. When the Horde was attacking, I was like, this is how the world is. This is the outside world outside of Jackson. We have no reason to believe there's not 1 billion infected or 7 billion infected across continents. And it's all because of the events that Joel did. So, can you really blame anyone else in this whole episode does? Because the whole reason they're still living in this hellscape is the choice that he made to protect his daughter at the end of season 1.
Yeah, maybe if the cure
maybe.
had worked, but we'll never know. And Joel made sure of that.
I think any doubts about the cure working or its efficacy, or whether they could have actually diplomatically gotten it to the various factions of humans across the globe, is all a misdirect and distraction to sympathize with Joel. I think that was the cure. I think Abby's dad could have done it for everyone, and I think it would have solved things. I choose to believe that because it paints everything that happens subsequently as a devastating choice that is not unlike any choice we would have made ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the story, is that we'll never know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll never know if all of this was in vain. And that's where the rubber meets the road in this series, and it's all about perspective. Again, I think Mason even called this out in the making of the episode that came after, that really everything in this story is perspective. If you put yourself in Ellie's shoes, you totally get it. If you put yourself in Abby's shoes, you totally get it. You may not agree with it, but you understand why these characters are motivated to do what they're doing.
That's what I like so much about the execution of this, is coming away from this. I don't hate Abby. I think, but fully 50 to 80% of that is that I knew this was coming, and I've had time to grieve, I think. But the rest of it is the excellent performance and the way that they've shown that that actions have consequences has been the whole show's thing from very early on. And seeing that, this come to fruition was, in fact, a foregone conclusion. And I think knowing that everyone went into it knowing that does soften the blow, I think, in the end.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, since you mentioned the reliving of the hospital scene from the end of season 1, I thought there were 2 shots that I thought were really interesting. One, the fact that Abby is walking Joel through reliving this memory of shooting the defenseless surgeon. And we see the nurses over the shoulder, and we know that one of the nurses was played by Laura Bailey, who was the voice of Abby in the original game. And then on the other scene I'm thinking of, unrelated, in the lodge towards the beginning of the episode, long before Joel shows up on scene, you can see the golf clubs leaning against the wall clearly in the background, and all of us gamers are like, oh no.
They are.
They showed us the clubs really, really early on.
The murder weapon. I missed it when they first showed it. Yeah, I was like, there they are.
Yeah.
Well, the show continues to not be divorced from the game, because when Abby's walking away with the Salt Lake crew, job done, who do we have singing to us except Ashley Johnson?
Yeah.
Who canonically in the show is Ellie's mom, but who in the video game voice Ellie is the one singing the song Through the Valley. And so the ways in which the video game cast is still perpetually involved in the production of the show, and I can't wait to hear what Troy Baker has to say about this particular episode on the official HBO's The Last of Us
Right.
podcast, which is probably out right now. The ways in which it's all interconnected, and these people who made this art, in some cases, well, 5 years ago now at this point, are able to still be a part of it and be a part of the story's evolution, the retelling of the story. It's an important story for our times. Like, I'm just so touched that they're able to, it seems like a close-knit family, and viewing a show that's as lovingly put together for this and as careful, it's controversial as hell, but also as carefully put together as this one is, I think is going to be their armor. Their protection, the fact that it's clear that everyone working on the show from any perspective loves this show and loves the story that they're telling, because it's important.
Right. And to kind of wrap everything, I suppose, I am so grateful that they didn't shy away from the big, difficult choice that the game made of killing Joel so early on. I think, I mean, you said it, it's the catalyst for everything else that happens. And so I'm glad that they did that. They did it true to the game in the ways that mattered. And at the same time, they did what this show does best, and they gave us something completely new that was also masterfully done and felt like it fit perfectly into our world. So they continue to have all of my trust as we go through the rest of the season. We've got 5 more episodes, and I am looking forward to each one and talking about it with the two of you and hopefully some others.
Oh my gosh, y'all. I cannot even begin to imagine what we're going to get these next 5 episodes, because they have so much ground to cover. I mean, in terms of story, we're still really early. And obviously we know they're not going to do the entire Last of Us Part 2 in just this season, but they're still going to have to cover a lot of ground. And I think they've done a great job in these first 2 episodes of doing that, of being able to cover a lot of ground, but still have it be so grounded and so detailed, so rooted in the characters that we know and love, and really propel the story forward, sometimes in new and different ways than what we're used to. But to still have it be so cohesive and so well done is just such a treat. I am so excited to be doing these reactions with y'all every week.
Yeah, this is the way to do adaptation.
Yep.
Well, the only thing like it that I've ever seen on TV comes from the other HBO show that Pedro and Bella were on. Who have we both seen Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah.
I haven't.
Haven't
but
we all?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I've seen
Let
the
me
first
tell-
2 seasons, I think.
It in the most general way possible. There are ice zombies and settings north of the wall that, especially the very best episodes of Game of Thrones, were the exact same way. Claustrophobic, scary, terrifying, so much snow, you never think you're gonna ever be warm again or see a fire. Like, this episode really in Jackson evoked the best episodes of early and later, especially season or episodes of Game of Thrones. And I just wanted to call that out because it's a fun coincidence that they were both on that show. But also, like, Scattered Body Parts goes right back to the pilot of Game of Thrones. Scattered Body Parts in the ice. In like a weird kind of maybe pattern. Is there an intelligence behind this? What's going on? It's all there. And so there were a lot of moments during this episode where it's like, holy crap, Game of Thrones. And I just wanted to say that before we wrap, because hey, it's fun to make those kinds of connections.
Totally. And if you want to see Pedro and Bella in completely different roles than the ones they're playing in The Last of Us, you really should watch Game of Thrones if you haven't. They're of course in like some of the later, like season 4 and later.
Yeah, 3, 4. Maybe
Oh my
5.
God, but they're amazing. Fantastic.
Now, although I think it's canon in both shows that Joel or that Pedro is a sexy man, right? Like that's kind of his
yeah.
that's kind of his whole deal on Game of Thrones. But then also like this episode, Abby's calling him handsome. How did that read to you all? She was like,
Oh, he's like a silver fox. So
yeah,
yeah.
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 What was a
In-
reference back to the previous episode too? There was a line where they were describing who Joel was, and handsome was
Oh.
one of the descriptors.
Oh, okay. Well, it's
Yeah.
nice to be known for his good looks.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, Oberyn Martell is handsome in a very different sort of way, but just as delectable. So if you haven't checked that out, you should. But Pedro Pascal is just, he's handsome. That's just his life canon,
Yeah, and a good
honestly.
person by all accounts.
I know. I saw a video of him meeting a fan the other day, and he went out of his way to tell her that he liked her nails. And I was like,
Aw.
I want Pedro Pascal to compliment my manicure. I was trying to combine the words manicure and compliment. But
did it.
anyway,
Yeah,
Well, and the way he treats his trans sister is really great too.
yeah.
Lux. Yeah, just so wonderful.
Yeah.
So, if that might be all that we have to say for now on this episode, of course, this is an ever-growing thing. If there's something we forgot or something that comes up next episode, we'll bring it back up.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's really been a joy kind of going through this episode with you all and just seeing we were really treated to just an hour of television that contained the most heart-wrenching scene from, the story thus far, and yet survived and have so much to say about the world and what the implications will be from this moment. And I think we did a good job not really spoilering anybody except for Joel's identical twin. That's 100% coming next episode. You're gonna
Yep.
see. My final thought on this is I will also say there are flashbacks that have not yet been shown with Joel and Ellie, and so
Oh, yeah.
we have a lot of reason to believe that this is not the end of Pedro on the
for
show.
sure
It's the
not.
end of Joel. It's not the end of Pedro. But my hope, again, because the show is changing things around, that I think there's maybe closer to like half a dozen to a dozen additional flashbacks with Joel that are, because in the game it makes sense to put them completely throughout the rest of the story, but I do hope they get streamlined a little bit on the show, because
Yeah.
it would open the wound every time I see him on the show, and that's not, I think, fully the intention of the creators.
I think they need to roll the flashbacks out in a strategic way so that the story of Abby and Ellie can breathe. If you're piling too many Joel flashbacks on us every episode, it's
Puts
not
us
gonna
back.
yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
you're right. It's gonna take us backwards, and we need to allow the Ellie and Abby dynamic to really fully play out and pepper those flashback scenes with Joel at very poignant strategic moments where they're gonna have the most impact. I think that's what we're gonna see.
Yeah, this was a
and-
very unfortunate but necessary kind of passing of the baton.
Yeah.
So it's gone from being the Joel and Ellie show to the Ellie and Abby show. But there's so much more. I want every one of those flashbacks that's in the game because I want more Joel. I want more. It'll inform her character. But because the game is 40 hours long, it's spread out a bit, and I think there are ways in which they could and probably will showcase that element of it in the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we also have a lot of Abby flashbacks too. So
I've
They'll-
forgotten
We'll see how
about
they do
that a
that
bit.
this
I'm sure
season.
they're going to intersperse. Yeah. I wonder if they're going to do that this season, Chelsea, or if they're going to hold a bunch of it for next season. I don't really know
We'll see.
yet.
There's still a lot of unknowns
Yeah.
for sure.
I'm just the sheer size and scope of what they've attempted to do and have so far succeeded in doing is just ridiculous. Like, no matter what the season is about or contains from this point forward, I can't believe they did it, y'all, and are still doing things. There's 5 more episodes left. Or
I know. I can't believe we're at the beginning of the season right now. It's crazy. This honestly, the scale of this episode could have been a finale.
yeah,
Honestly.
Yeah, the joys of a season 2 in a world that's already established.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, y'all, same time, same place next week. What do you think?
do it. Let's make
Cool.
it happen.
Sounds good to me. Hopefully a little bit less traumatizing next week.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my
Well,
whiskey.
We'll
Little
see.
bit. Keep my
But-
expectations in check.
We want to thank everyone that's been viewing us live and letting everyone know and reminding the listeners and viewers that we are live on YouTube and is it Twitch, Laura, as
Yep.
well? with each episode on Sunday nights. The audio episode that you're hearing comes out on the feed, obviously, every week for the podcast, for What the Hype Podcast. And on YouTube, our account, pull this up, is What the Hype Podcast. So definitely check us out on there. We're going to have content for all of the fandoms and pop culture genius things that we cover, the properties, programs, etc., all on our YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch. Make sure you're following us everywhere. What the Hype Show, What the Hype Podcast. Our website is whatthehypepodcast.com. And also, this has not come up yet. We mentioned it last week. Email us. Let us know how you feel about tonight's episode and put something innocuous in the subject matter. Put Pillsbury Doughboy. Put something that nobody will know what's going on.
Specifically
in the subject
Pillsbury
matter.
Doughboy.
Yeah, because wheat is the way that the virus was transferred in the first.
Yes.
I'm on
and
it.
by
I get it.
virus, we mean spoilers, because our fourth contributing host to this fandom, Pam, has not played the game, so she does not know what's coming in
And
this
she's
episode.
coming on. We're going to actually, on our YouTube, we've asked and requested that she post a reaction when she can see this episode to the events of this episode. But Pam is coming, and so too are feedback moments from the audience. So if you want to email us, please do that at whatthehypepodcast@gmail.com. But in the subject line, Pillsbury, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to talk about, but don't make it a spoiler.
Or you can also leave your spoiler-free comments on YouTube, on Instagram, TikTok, wherever it is that you follow us. We are What the Hype Podcast everywhere except for X, where we're What the Hype Show, but nobody uses X anymore. Nobody of consequence anyway, so who cares? But we're What the Hype Podcast everywhere else. We would love it if you would check us out. And like Eric was alluding to, in the weeks ahead, we will have a lot of coverage going on for y'all. Obviously, we're covering The Last of Us Season 2 every week with a reaction. But myself, Micah, and Pam are getting ready to kick off some coverage of Netflix's You Season 5. So you can look forward to that this week as
me?
well. You!
Me?
It's the Netflix show starring you.
What? I'm in
Eric.
a Netflix show?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to
Doesn't that sound
shit
like
right
something
up.
out of Black Mirror when you find out Netflix has a show about your life? I think there is an episode like that, actually.
Or 5 or 6. Yeah. So that's very exciting. But yeah, What the Hype is going strong, and I'm thrilled as ever to spore with you all. And this has been a real delight and a real fun. So we will see everyone next Sunday after episode 3, titled Who Knows What, directed by Peter Hoare.
All right. Well, we'll come together to cry next Sunday if season 1's episode 3 is anything to predict what we should expect next week.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's worth saying. Final thing, Micah has completely caught up, presuming tonight's show as well, and played the whole first game.
Wow.
Yeah,
He's
he
really
was telling
fallen
me about
hard
that
for
earlier.
it. This is how you know that Micah's fallen hard, because 4 days ago or whatever, he's like, finished the show. 3 days ago, I bought the game.
Yeah,
tonight,
finish the game.
Yeah, finish the game. and like, that's how you know that he's absolutely 100% obsessed. Is likely, I would say the odds are above 50% that Micah will be joining us as well as Pam on one of these season
great.
reaction episodes.
Totally. Yeah. I already let him know. I was like, hey, if you want to join us for a reaction episode, we can slot you in. So hopefully we'll get Micah to join us soon.
I want to know Mark's thoughts too. And, you can tell him
Oh.
it's safe that we spoiled the whole Joe Miller identical twin review.
Okay. Okay, good. He'll be relieved to hear that. But no, I know that he would love to come back and join us for more of these as well. I'm sure he will.
We would love all of the people who are listening and enjoying, and write us in, like Laura was saying, comment on our videos. Please let us know that you care, that you're enjoying what we're talking about, because we are all enjoying this together. And it's really wonderful to have you, the listener. And thank you all. And that was The Hype on HBO's The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2, Through the Valley.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all. Alrighty.